Hi, everybody. 995 days since Richard vanished from the barracks there at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, after he was continuously and severely retaliated against by his own. And what do I mean by that? Continuously and severely, because Richard, um, when he got to Fort Bliss in 2018, he was the very excited, aspiring soldier. Not only that, he was the distinguished honor graduate for basic training and advanced individual training for his cycle there at Fort Sill. And so he was ready to go green to gold. He had college credits. Um, that he had clept out of. He spoke German, he spoke Korean. He went to Korean culture language school in Korea. He went to the Volkshochschule to learn German and the Landstuhl, the K-Town area, Kaiserslautern area in Germany. And of course, he lived in Ireland too. And so he was super excited. He was aspiring. He had applied for, get this, CID. He wanted to be a criminal investigator in the United States Army. Um, and so he was deployed very quickly to Qatar. When he got to Qatar, everything changed. So when he got with his Delta Battery 143 command and served underneath them, everything changed. He said to me, Mom, it's so bad. It's so bad. The leadership is so bad. Um, he didn't want to go green to gold anymore. This was already in Qatar, okay, during the deployment. And he said it was so bad. Um, that he just wanted to do his time and get out. He made E4 very quickly, and I asked him if he wanted to, get E5. He said no. He didn't even want to be an NCO. He wanted to just do his time and get out. It was so bad. The leadership was so bad, and he really didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to talk about it to me. So we're getting reports now that Fort Bliss, and I'm sure others too. But when he got back to Fort Bliss, he came to stay with us in Florida. That was in August of 2019, and he was already uh, telling us, "I will talk about anything with y'all, but do not mention the United States Army. Do not mention the Army. I'm not going to talk about the Army." So I was, I just wanted to have a good time. I don't have too much time with him. So we had a nice time, and we even took a family portrait, and you can see those pictures. The picture of him in the red T-shirt. That's when he was with us, and yeah, we didn't talk about the Army. That's He absolutely didn't want to do that. So I hope that everyone can hear me tonight before I get too far into this. Let me make sure I have a connection with everybody. Yep. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to leave that on. Get some real time questions in there. Thank you for saying that you're praying for us and that you're praying that he's found. He has been found. Okay, there's no doubt in my mind that they have found Richard's remains and that they have found his partial remains and that Richard was murdered and dismembered. There's no doubt in my mind. Okay. I'm, you know, is there some kind of miracle that he would come walking up to the door? Um, I just, you know, wouldn't that be great? That would be so great, and we wouldn't reach the 1,000 days. Okay, but we're at 1,000 days. Even law enforcement, when we were there in October and November, when we talked to the Texas Rangers in November, they already presumed him dead. Okay, at that time, and I fought that. I'm like, no, you can't give up on him so quick. But he was already presumed dead. All right. Um, or they knew something because the word was out already. The word was out behind the paywall, behind the privileged wall, in the shadows. The word was out already that they had found Richard's partial remains. They had found Richard's remains in Mexico. Um, they had found partial remains in the El Paso area. And, you know, we have asked and inquired, Cover Up Veronica. We have asked the FBI. We've asked the generals. We've asked Richard's command. We have been on here day in and day out asking, is Richard dead? Are you hiding Richard's body? Is the FBI hiding Richard's remains? Partial remains. And we're like, just give us any part of him. We just want any part of him, right? So we want them to come out and admit to what has gone on. And so with all the new information that we have received, and it is piles, y'all, piles of information that we have gotten and have been weeding through and everything. There's a vehicle involved in this too, and there's a vehicle besides the truck. Okay, besides the truck. Remember we were talking about the Dodge Ram. I believe it was a 2005, but it was the color of my stapler here, the back of the stapler. Yeah. And it had shaved handles, and it was a low rider. It was totally customized. And we, so we have a lot of inquiries, a lot of questions that we have asked. And the picture is coming together more and more every day. And I will tell you what happened. Richard saw things in Qatar. Richard, I probably mentioned this in the past, but Richard was a people watcher. You know, he loved to watch people. He loved to keep close eyes on, a lot of men don't notice things, but Richard did. Sometimes you can go and get your hair cut and your husband won't even know that you had your hair cut, but Richard did. He paid attention to detail. And so he was people watching, and he didn't like what he saw. And in this military, it's like Hogan's Heroes kind of, I see nothing, I say nothing, I hear nothing, because they don't want to be exposed. They don't want accountability. They don't want to expose anybody else because they don't want retaliation. And there's no oversight. There's no oversight because Cover Up Veronica has been told not to have oversight. She has so much power. Someone is pulling her strings because she could have prevented all of this years ago. Absolutely years ago. She has power over Fort Bliss. She can call for a legislative inquiry. I wrote some things here down to make sure that I know that I'm speaking the right speak, right? But she has broken her duty. She has not done her duty. She has been neglected, uh, um, negligent. She's been derelict because she is on the Judiciary Committee. She has broken all of the committees that she's on, would give her power to oversee what's going on at Fort Bliss. And she has been negligent on that because she could hold the military accountable all this time. All this time she could clean up. Because let me tell you, when we got there, Brigadier General Stewart was very happy to tell us that he cleaned up the weapons because the barracks were flush with weapons. And the CID, when I mentioned that on a live stream, they were pretty upset. And I got a call from CID and he goes, it wasn't just Richard's barracks, it was all the barracks. Like, that doesn't make it better. That doesn't make it better. Because you see, that screamed that the command at Fort Bliss, amongst others, this is a systemic problem. We're not following standard operating procedures. Nothing is done in the military without paperwork, without orders, okay, without operational procedures. And then you have standard operating procedures. And I'll get that out tomorrow, the barracks standard. Matter of fact, I probably could get it right now. And unless they took it off, because, I'm being censored. I have to say, I'm being censored. So let's see if I'm going to look for the SOP. See if it comes up. Oh, yes, it does. What does this say here? Yes, got it. Okay. So here it is. And it says, let me turn this on now. So here it is, and you can't see it really well, but I should share it. But these are the standard operating procedures that Richard had, and there's lots of them. And they're very interesting because I'm telling you, they're all being broke. These standard operating procedures are not being followed. Not being followed at all. Because if they were being followed, we wouldn't have the mess that we're having. And they haven't been followed for a long, long time. And yet they give them to the soldiers, and the soldiers can laugh at them. They've made a mockery out of standard operating procedures. Do you understand? Our command, our 44 four-star generals and admirals have made a mockery out of our standard operating procedures. They have given them no weight. They haven't taken them serious at all. And what it does is if they don't like you, then they can use that as an excuse to get even with you. Yet they don't follow them. And doesn't that sound like Cover Up Veronica? She's on all these committees. She's on these coalitions or all the things. I mean, she's so powerful. And yet she doesn't wield it at all for the defense of this country, to oversee that we have a well-oiled machine called the United States military, that Fort Bliss is doing what they need to be doing, as far as following their standard operating procedures, as far as training and securing the safety of our soldiers when they're laying in their bed in the barracks, um, as far as not bringing in illegal drugs onto a military installation, not allowing colonels to pervert themselves in their doggy sex cult. She's not overseeing them at all. So she's not, she's making a mockery out of the committees that she belongs to. She's making a mockery out of her office being a representative of the her district in El Paso, Texas, of the great state of Texas for the United States of America. She's making a mockery out of everyone that's voted for her, anyone that is her constituent. She's making a mockery out of them because she's working for somebody else. Somebody else is pulling her strings. And so that makes her guilty, because if you break your duty, then when things like this happen, and I'm going to tell you what happened, and you know what's been happening there. We have our soldiers getting murdered. We have our soldiers getting sexually assaulted. We have them overdosing. We have suicide skyrocketing. And where is she holding them accountable? These are our volunteer sons and daughters. And the leadership is so bad. So bad. We just have had decades of bad leadership in the military. I'm sorry. But look at Afghanistan. Look at Iraq. Look at our military. They're not following standard operating procedures. We don't have good housing. The housing is toxic. So many soldiers are getting sick because of toxic materials. Where's the oversight on that? Right? And then also, all the crimes that are happening, the whole condition that's on base, the money that is being laundered, because when you look at even a Google Earth picture of Fort Bliss, you will see it's very clear that this is not a $1 trillion military. Okay? They're getting trillions of dollars. They're getting audited, and they're not passing the audit. Matter of fact, they have unaccounted for trillions of dollars. And then you look at Fort Bliss, and they get commissioned to look after the most precious assets, our sons and daughters. And also, let's not forget about that emergency intake center that is housing migrants. And they're missing, this is last year, Andy Biggs told, Representative Andy Biggs was blowing the whistle on this, that El Paso is not doing their job and looking at what's going on Fort Bliss, because that emergency intake center has 20,000 plus migrant children, minors, unaccounted for. We don't know where they're going. We don't know where they're at. They're unaccounted for. And anyone that's in the government system knows that we have some very big concerns with the renewal of pedophilia, with the renewal, this huge uptick in child sex trafficking, child sex abuse, child pornography, so the extortion of children. We know that. And yet, do nothing, cover up Veronica is not doing anything. She's not calling for any hearings, legislative hearings. She's not putting together a committee to subpoena all these people. She could subpoena all these people. And then she's not revealing her huge conflict of interest because of her husband being like a judge for immigration. He's not like a total judge, but kind of like a judge for immigration. And he answers to the Department of Justice. She is to have oversight of the Department of Justice. And so there is a big conflict of interest there, and she has not revealed that in so many ways. In so many ways. And so, what about in Richard's case? Because the Department of Justice, when my husband asked them to help to have oversight over these other agencies, because all these other agencies, they answered to the Department of Justice. So that's why Rob wrote a letter. We paid, I think it was $500. He could tell me. For the Department of Justice to have oversight over these agencies. And they should have given us our money back, because none of these agencies are doing their job, right? They're not doing their job. They're not following standard operating procedures. This is just a systemic problem. This is just a across the board problem that our representatives and the DA and the AG, so the Attorney General and the whole AUSAs, including Greg McDonald and Ian Hanna, they're just not doing their standard operating procedures. And of course, on Fort Bliss, we know that they're not, because it's just one crime coming out after another, one death coming out after another, one overdose coming out after the other, and suicides, and it's just a real mess. And how can this happen when we are so bloated with all of these glorified police, with all of this intelligence agencies? How can this happen? So there needs to be a retrenching. Really, there really does. Because we need police officers. We need law enforcement officers. We need to have that oversight. Or we could just all together get rid of the standing federal army and give the states the power to have a defense. And that way having, 50, 52 if you include, or, like Puerto Rico, if you include all of that, they each have their own defense. And if we need to come together to go to war, then they can vote on who wants to go. I just think it would restrain a lot of the evil, a lot of the corruption, and save us a lot of money. Because to have these audits and trillions of dollars being unaccounted for, and it would also restrain a lot of the evil with the emergency intake center. It would inspire a lot more oversight. But, the problem is we have huge donors. Huge donors that make a lot of money off of these defense contracts, make a lot of money somehow, some way. I'm not smart enough to know exactly how, but they make a lot of money with all of their manipulation of our government system. And they pull the strings on our representatives that have subpoena power and can absolutely call a hearing and force, with a subpoena, them to come and testify, to show up and testify. And if they don't, they could be arrested for, um, they, it is just so shocking that we're at this stage and that things like this can happen to a soldier. So I want to tell you a little bit what happened to Richard when he arrived back in El Paso, back on Fort Bliss, after he visited us in Florida. And it makes perfect sense. It was 2019 all of this happened, because he saw things in Qatar. He was telling us it was bad. He didn't elaborate on what he saw. Okay? But he decided at Fort Bliss that he was going to be a whistleblower. And that's exactly what he did. And we have gotten reports that he did go to his command. He did reach out. But we know that First Sergeant Jay Paulin was totally up to no good, don't we? We know that. We know that. Just look at the trail that he left in the case of Find Richard Halliday, and you will see that it is very suspicious, and he needs to be investigated, and he needs to be audited, and because with the information that we have right now, absolutely, he was up to no good. So we heard that when Richard tried to confront, they didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't want to act, or maybe they were part of it. And so he had to go over and above and outside the chain of command, and he turned to the Child Protective Services. So he didn't go to the Child Protective Services because someone was spanking their child. Okay? No. It was for the sexual abuse of children and more. Okay? And he put in a report, maybe two. We have a FOIA. They haven't answered our FOIAs. Our FOIAs are not getting answered. So this is a systemic cover-up. And you can see that with cover-up Veronica. Do nothing. Or, she's working for someone else, and it's not for her constituents. I'll tell you that much. It's not for her constituents. Because the case of Richard would disturb her so much that she would call for a hearing. She would issue subpoenas. And she could have gotten to the bottom of this very, very quickly, because that's how much power she has. So when Richard did the whistleblowing, automatically a file was opened at the CID because it triggered the IG to be all over the barracks because of Halliday. Now, the IG were all over the barracks, but when did people start saying it was Halliday? And when, and this is the word that we're getting, these are the inquiries that we have, that Tavita Nusa was assigned to his case as a whistleblower. And because of that, he betrayed Richard by leaking Richard's file to many people. Okay? So, and the word that we're getting is, how did they leak Richard's file? They took pictures of it and they sent off the screenshots. That's the word that we're getting. So, and there's many involved in this. But as soon as, Tavita Nusa is different because he is a law enforcement officer. He was a special agent carrying a very precious badge, a law enforcement badge that gave him privileges. And even during COVID, he was given privileges. He could travel. He could go across that border with that badge. You see, he could cross the border of Mexico with that badge. He could be out after curfew with that badge. He had privilege. He was deemed essential. And so what he did was betray Richard's status as a whistleblower. So Richard's status as having whistleblower protection was null and void with that breach, with that illegal exposure of a whistleblower. That in itself is a crime, because then he put a target on Richard's back. He put Richard in danger. Now, why did he do that? Well, because he was very, very close to Leilani Hart. And Leilani Hart was in a divorce. She's still in a divorce from the last time I heard. And, you know, they have a lot of family businesses. They have a lot going on with retirement and everything like that. And so it's been an ugly divorce. And it's just like what Dallas Hart was telling us, that he said squarely that his father was very generous to her from the divorce, but she wouldn't take it. She wouldn't take it, the offers. And so they set out to create a file to submit a complaint about James Hart. And in that, she fortified that with Richard's leaked file. And that put Richard in even more danger, because it put Richard in the middle of a nasty divorce. And that was a problem, because then you have the son of Leilani Hart and James Hart, First Lieutenant Dallas Hart. They have another son, but they have First Lieutenant Dallas Hart. And in that complaint, it was messy, y'all. It was messy. It's messy. It's all kinds of sexual abuse, even of an 8-year-old, and child pornography, and all kinds of stuff. So that, of course, gives a motive. It gives a motive to retaliate on Richard. It gives a motive, especially if you're First Lieutenant Dallas Hart. And we're getting information that they haven't been honest with us. Okay? They haven't been honest with us. Matter of fact, they've lied to us. And things are much closer than what they say. And so we'll get to the bottom of that, because it's what we're hearing, the information, what we're getting, and their word. But the big problem in all of this is, where are the generals to back up the claims of First Lieutenant Dallas Hart? Where are they to back up a very dubious travel voucher, right? Where that could easily be counterfeited. And in today's world, with all the AI, with all of the technology that we have, easily things they need to be verified, right? Everything needs to be verified. And so this really puts a motive in there. If Richard is exposed illegally like he was, and then his information includes who knows what, it must have been really something to be used to fortify this report against James Hart. And the interesting thing about this report that was turned into the CID, and it was so compelling, it was such a serious crime, a serious series of crimes, because you understand there's been complaints in that family about sexual abuse and weird sexual stuff going on all the way back to the 1990s. This is not something new. And so there's a lot of history in there, and it must be so compelling. And she was so serious, Leilani Hart was so serious to make this official, to give validity to what she had in that complaint, which included things from Richard's file. She had it notarized. Okay? Because Richard turned in sex videos too. And, we know that videos are missing and videos have been tampered with. There's a lot of tampering of evidence here. And so that's obstruction of justice. There's so much obstruction of justice. And I think the biggest obstructor of justice is cover up Veronica Escobar, because she could oversee the Department of Justice. That's her job. And yet she didn't reveal she had a conflict of interest with her husband being the immigration judge, right? Because he answers to the Department of Justice. So why would she want to carry out an oversight of the Department of Justice that handles all those, FBI and CID and Homeland Security and all of them, Customs Border Protectors, all of them. Why would she not want to oversee that when her husband has to answer to that? This is a huge conflict of interest that she did not reveal, that she did not step aside and let other people handle this. Okay, she didn't notify us about it because we asked for her help. We needed her help. We still need her help. And that's why we wrote that letter, because we still need her to do her job, and she's still derelict, and she's still negligent, and she's covering up. And so it gets even worse, though. It gets even worse, because when all of this was going on and Richard was in this CID file, that CID file was so serious, and Leilani Hart wanted it to have carry a lot of weight to be legitimate, that she had it notarized. And the notary public, we talked with him, and he absolutely confirmed that it was notarized on the 22nd of July, 2020, the day before Richard went missing. So all of this was going on, and that takes, we've been doing a lot of paperwork, and to get that kind of complaint about child sex abuse and other things that are just really, very, very serious, to get that all together so that it would be accepted not only by CID, but also by FBI. FBI then opened up a file with this CID complaint. And so that's why these leaked file numbers are very important, and we haven't heard one thing back about it. It's been crickets again. And because this was so serious, and it happened the day before Richard went missing. So all of the writing of it, takes a long time. And then so the leaking took time. So this all happened early on, and before Richard went missing. So Richard, I think that the badge was lost, that Tavita Nusa lost his badge after Richard went missing. Okay? That's what I believe. Maybe it was before. Maybe it was so far. Maybe it started happening in 2019, all of this. It could have started happening in 2019, and then it caught up and he lost his those are very good questions that if you have any inkling of that, call 941-677-0060. So I think we're going to get that information very, very soon. And when Richard was exposed like that, he started getting retaliated against severely and continuously. And who by? Was it bullying by the other soldiers? It was Major General Clem Coward. It was Lieutenant Colonel Roddick. They had it in for him. I don't know if they were working under the orders of somebody else. Somebody else might have been pulling their strings, but they had it in for him. And it started with a GOMAR. That it was made permanent, and that means your life is destroyed as far as the military goes. That's what that means. And the chaptering process started happening, because when that happens, of course, they start chaptering you out because you're good for nothing. You can't get promoted, you can't go to any schools, you can't aspire to anything, you can't be of service with a permanent GOMAR. And then they gave him a field grade Article 15, Lieutenant Colonel Roddick did. You can read it on there. It's so sloppy. And with all of the rapes, let's just say it, with all of the grooming in these sex cults, with all the violations in the barracks because they were not following the standard operating procedure, with all of the child porn everywhere, being on private servers, being on servers, and you go, oh, my tax documents, and you go in, you can have any kind of porn you want, and you can just download it, or you can get things airdropped to you, to your device, right? They have all of this going on and more and more. The extortion, the racketeering, everything. And they're trying to tell me that Richard is going to, if he would have fought the field grade Article 15 with maximum punishment, y'all. The loss of 3 ranks, that sets him up for even more retaliation, bullying, harassment. Okay? 50% of his pay, that's suffering. And 45 days of extra duty wearing full battle gear and a mask because it was COVID. And we're talking about May, June 2020. And what was this all for? Because they take underage drinking seriously. Right? I say that because he had one counseling slip for 0.04 BAC, which is a calibration error. It's a little bit of mouthwash. It's a squirt of perfume. It's nothing. And that's what they were going after him for. And, there is all this talk that he disobeyed battery commander's order. Well, first, when we got there, they were like, he disobeyed commanding order of Fort Bliss to shelter in place. No, because he didn't. He didn't, and there's all kinds of proof that he didn't. And you can go to Find Richard Halliday to see that proof. And then they went, oh, no, 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 he didn't do that. No, I know he didn't. Because that was in April, and you're pointing to the 28th of March when they came back from the field, the day after they came back from the field on a Saturday. A Saturday. And then they go, oh, well, he broke battery commander's order. And so we get this letter sent to me, my husband, not even addressed on it, from Captain Park, David Park, who he's covering up for somebody. Someone's pulling his strings too. Well, of course, he's a West Pointer, so who's pulling his strings? Because in this report, what is left out is Richard's whistleblower status. His whistleblower status is left out, not even mentioned in this letter. So, to me, that speaks volumes. And he said he disobeyed. He wasn't even there because there was a four vehicle pileup. He gave his so-called orders to obey El Paso's suggestions for COVID. He gave that to SFC Gabriel Orona, who, didn't even give it to the soldiers. He gave it to each little, what is it called? Not a platoon leader. That's an officer. The squad leader. Thank you. He said he gave it to the squad leaders, and the squad leader assured him that Richard heard it. Well, I went and looked at the El Paso recommendations for that time, the 28th of March, and they also mentioned that they read HipCon Charlie, because it was at HipCon Charlie at the time. And there was nothing there that you couldn't go for a drive on your own. Nothing. So that was all just excuses to retaliate against him severely and continuously for the real reason. And that was for the whistleblowing, y'all. That was for the whistleblowing. Why the IG were all over the barracks because of Richard. And so they labeled him a troublemaker. Tavita Nusa betrayed Richard's whistleblower protection status, and Richard was now a target. He suffered that Gomer. He was even more a target. He suffered the field grade Article 15 that was unjust with maximum punishment and became more a target. Nobody had his 6. And Cover Up Veronica sure didn't. Because the state of Fort Bliss was so bad because of her lack of oversight throughout the years. Throughout the years. Because Richard's not the first. Okay? And he wasn't the last. But he is the first because he went missing in July of 23rd of 2020, just a couple weeks, less than a couple weeks after Vanessa Guillen's remains were identified. That was announced on the 6th of July, 2020, and Richard went missing the 23rd of July, 2020. So, just days apart. And the leadership was scrambling at the highest levels. They were scrambling because of the mess that was in our military, that is in our military. And shortly after Richard went missing, his remains were found. and they covered it up. They kept it a secret. He was dead, and they kept it a secret. He was dismembered, and they kept it a secret. Because they did not want to be held accountable. They did not want the public eye was on them for and with a eye of scrutiny, an eye of concern. Not the eye normally like, oh, thank you for your service. Let me give you free tickets to Disney. No, they had a little bit of a scowl because of what happened with Enrique Roman Martinez, because of what was happening with Austin Hawke, because of Gregory Morales being found, and of course, condition and the way that the CID handled Vanessa Guillen's case. And I have to also mention Caleb Smither, because he was left to rot to the 5th stage of decomposition in the barracks because they weren't. Now, this is Fort Stewart. This is Fort Bragg. This is This is Fort Bliss. This is a systemic problem. This is 44 four-star generals walking together to help, bringing our military to the abyss. That's causing a lot of deaths of a lot of our sons and daughters. That's causing military readiness to suffer like we've never seen it before suffer. This is a national security issue. This is a national security alert. And Richard saw something, said something, reported it, and he was murdered because of it. Now, in a civil case, that would be called wrongful death. A wrongful death. And a lot of these people are guilty of wrongful death of Richard Halliday. The wrongful death of Richard Halliday. And they might laugh nervously and say, but where are their remains? Well, you know, they did their level best to destroy Vanessa Guillen's remains. They bludgeoned her. I don't know how that happened. My husband's like, how did they get Vanessa Guillen's body in a Pelican case after she was dead? How did that happen? And then put her, put her in the back of a vehicle, drive her out Leon River, make some stops to get some lime and concrete, bring their shovel with them, bring their hatchet or their machete with them, and proceed and lighter fluid or whatever they did, because they cut her up, they burnt her, then they dug a foxhole and put her in it, covered lime on her, and put concrete on her, and then the dirt and the leaves and the twigs, and they tried to burn that Pelican case. After all of that, it probably was on fire, and they just were tired and they left, and the Pelican case didn't get totally melted. But so they did their level best to get rid of her body, and it didn't work. Her found. And Richard came after her. And so they had to work harder. And we have information that not only did they torture him, do whatever to him, there's this sex cult on Fort Bliss that's so vile. Uh, People have said, I think he was raped. I think he was raped. And then they killed him. It could have been his pistol's missing. I don't know if they shot him. We have conflicting reports on how he died. Um, and then they dismembered him, which takes a person that knows, some surgical skills. And they separated it up, and they buried him in different places. That's why Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe on Christmas, even though they had already found partial remains, he was still looking for partial remains at Christmas time. That's why Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz was shaking so hard. And I mean, when I say so hard, I'm talking about like leaves on a windy day in fall, right? On a tree. It's just, he was shaking hard. And you knew something was wrong when you looked at his face. And it's probably why First Sergeant Jay Paulin never came to any of our rallies. He didn't want me to look in his face. Because these NCOs, these senior NCOs, they're like in a club. They're buddies. And, that's why there was this text messaging and everything. They were doing this damage control. They were doing a cover up. They were colluding and covering up, y'all. And cover up, Veronica was in on it too. She was in on it too. So a lot of people guilty of wrongful death. And, I thank God right now for everything that we have been through. Because I count one of our major accomplishments of tracing those burner phones. Because when we started getting information, there was, FBI informants that were trying to pretend like they were helping and everything, or political pundits trying to do damage control, trying to sabotage the direction of this search for her son. And part of that was as soon as the judge put in the CID, or the officer of the court put the report into the CID and the FBI that there was a leak, and we had names, Tavita Nusa, Leilani Hart, First Lieutenant Hart. When that came out, then it started. The phone messages started. The PSYOP, these are trained people, okay? These are trained people. The way they harass you, the way they intimidate you, the way they threaten you. These are educated people. They can write volumes and volumes. And they're trained to mess with your head. And we suffered through that for months. And so I count it probably one of our greatest accomplishments. I think the greatest accomplishment is when we hold them accountable, when we get accountability. That will be our greatest accomplishment. When we have whatever is left of our son that we can bury, that we can have some closure, that we can put a lid on the suffering. I don't know if we could ever do that, but at least have a reprieve of it, right? And hold them accountable for what they've done in this case. And they do it in the name of trying to protect our national interest. They hypnotize those in the military to get people to lockstep. And I believe probably Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz, because he was shaking so hard. You know that he had some conscience, right? Uh, he totally went to the evil side, but they say, well, for the good of the army, for the good of the. Wait a minute, no, no, because the army is to defend the Constitution, the land and the people, the land and the people. And there is no army, there is no cohesive military, there is no esprit de corps, there is no Medal of Honor ethos if we don't have a love for the land and the people, if we don't have each other's six, if we don't have a love for righteousness, if we don't establish justice, we have nothing. Everything disintegrates, and that's why these lies are unsustainable. So whoever's a leader, it's like, they make the barracks co-ed, and I go, whose bright idea was it to make the barracks co-ed when we have, a ratio minimum 1-9, 1 female to 9 males, right? And these are not just any 1 female to 9 males. These are females, 1 female to 9 20, 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds. They're full of vim and vigor, y'all. And you've got the women, they're at the height of their beauty, and you've got the men at the height of their vim and vigor, and you're putting them in the same barracks. Whose bright idea was this? You're just asking for trouble. You're creating trouble. You're institutionalizing or giving a green flag for sexual harassment and sexual assault. So whose bright idea was it to say, Vanessa Guillen's case, people are going down for it, so we need to cover this for the good of the country. We don't want, we're not going to call that family. We're not going to call that family. That Richard, they probably don't even care about him anyway. He's just a troublemaker. Are we going to go down for him? Isn't that what First Sergeant Jay Pollan said in one of his messages? Am I going to go down for Richard Halliday? I don't think so. Isn't that the message he sent? I don't have the exact words out of my lips right now, but the message he sent was, I am not going to go down for Richard Halliday. I might be his first sergeant, but hell with that. I'm protecting my own rear end. That was his attitude. That is wrongful death. I think he's guilty of wrongful death. I think they're culpable of so much right now because they had Richard's remains, I think, before we even knew he was missing. And while we were there, and right after we left, they were still trying to pick up his pieces of his dismembered body, wherever they were. Whose bright idea was it to do something so low, so cold-blooded, so evil, and so criminal, implicating so many? And they say it was for our national security or defense or whatever, and it's baloney. Because they just blew it up. They just blew it up. And I don't think this was a one-off. I think they've done this before and they've gotten away with it. And we'll see with our claims and our court cases that are coming up, or we have to, in order to get discovery, we have to put in a claim. We have to um, get this in the courtroom. We have our nation in shambles, and this um, let me tell you, this is a big deal. And you know what? Where's Kocherga? Where's Miss Kocherga? Kocherga? Where is she? This is so big. And she calls and she's like, kind of, I don't know who's pulling her strings. So the media, it's very clear that who is donors to cover up Veronica is donors to the media. Okay? It's very clear. And they've put Richard in danger, so much so that he had to suffer through continuous severe retaliation until he was whatever they did to him. I have all these reports of the certain tortures that they did to him, and ended up murdering him and dismembering him, and then hiding that fact from the people that love him, and letting us be misled and suffer through what we've suffered through, which is nothing compared to Richard. It's nothing, really. It's nothing compared to what he at. Um, and the silence is deafening, isn't it? From the media. It's not okay that the generals are not writing us, okay? That they're not responding to our inquiries. All of these legislative inquiries from even Cover Up Veronica haven't been, she hasn't responded. And that's not okay. And she knows that we're not getting responses back from Fort Bliss and the military, and she has oversight and she does nothing. And, it's just, who's pulling the strings? Because even Ted Cruz's strings are being pulled. He tried to do something little, and he got flipped off by a subordinate. And then he wants to be president, but he lets a subordinate by 23 ranks flip him off. Something's really fishy here. Something's very wrong here. The silence is deafening. It's not okay that it's silence. And what makes this even bigger is that Richard is an example. He is the very first CONUS Dust 1 missing soldier under the new absent soldier flowchart. So what does that mean? CONUS, continental U.S., right? Right there in our backyard, right there in one of our major U.S. installations that are very important, Fort Bliss. Dust 1, duty, status, whereabouts unknown. Right? So that's what the Dust 1 stands for. And under the absent soldier flowchart. The absent soldier flowchart came about because of Vanessa Guillen, because of Gregory Morales, because of finding these dead soldiers in the Fort Hood mess when they had said, oh, he's AWOL, oh, he's a deserter. And then Richard's the very first one on this list. And what do they say in this People First initiative? They don't even contact us. They don't even contact us. we had to contact them. And then they say, "Oh, well, we can't help you anymore. He's a deserter. He was, well, now he's a deserter. We can't help you. You're out the door. You're out the door." That was not too good. But you know what? Now it makes sense. They wanted to push us out the door so quick because they were in possession of pieces of my son, and they didn't want to tell us that. We can't handle the truth. Yes, we can. Do you want to know about your son? Yes. I want to know about my son. The PAO, who's still there. Yeah, wrongful death. She's still there. And when she called, she said, "Are you ready to hear about your son?" I said, "Yes." And she didn't tell us, "Oh, well, we found his pieces. He's dead." She didn't say that. They started a smear campaign on Richard. That's what they did. When we were unaware that Richard had gone through this, and we were rushing around rallying because of COVID. Our son-in-laws losing their jobs, and we were trying to figure out what to do with everything, handling all of that. They were colluding behind our backs how to not tell us, how to hide the fact that our son had been murdered, that he had lost his whistleblower status, his whistleblower protection, and was severely and continuously retaliated against until it got physical, and he ended up being dismembered and separated and strewn around where they had to go and try to pick up his pieces. Now, that's what they were colluding. That's what they were. That's what their op-ord was. Not Find Richard Halliday. Cover up Richard Halliday's case. So I'll take any questions now. Still praying he's found. Thank you. Thank you, Anicia. Thank you. Then he needs to be sent home to you. Yes, absolutely. And given a respectful funeral. Whoever found his remains need to release him to you until you get this. Yes, and we're working on that. We're working on that. I'm like that also. I read people very well. Yeah. Veronica Escobar said in a press release stating she would help find a third party to investigate, and she didn't do what she said to the public. No, she didn't. 20,000 children unaccounted for from the Fort Bliss under Veronica Escobar's watch. Yes, the emergency intake center. Why aren't these individuals charged with espionage? No, they don't hesitate. They get this 21-year-old National Guardsman who is serving in this absolute soup sandwich military. Soup sandwich with holes in it. I guess it's with Swiss cheese. And it's leaking like a sieve. Our intelligence is not being guarded. Absolutely. With all of this AI stuff, with all of these contracts to all of these tech people and everything, our national intelligence information was leaking through this soup sandwich Swiss cheese, right? And this young 21-year-old is seeing the information. He's seeing the intelligence. He's saying, "Oh, wow, we have boots on the ground in Ukraine. We're not supposed to have fighting forces boots on the ground in Ukraine. Oh, wow. They're doing some interesting things with the money we're sending. It's not what they're telling the public. Our White House right now and administration is committing major crimes. Major crimes. I'm going to tell my buddies on Discord. I'm going to take some pictures here, like, Tavita Nusa did, of Richard's file. And I'm not saying that was the right thing to do. But I'm saying it is so systemic. It is such the norm. If a CID special agent is going to leak because he's having a roll in the hay, and he's going to put one of our most valuable assets under so much harm, threats of harm, that he ends up murdered and dismembered, then a 21-year-old that is not really trained, is not really thinking, there's going to be lots of those. He's probably not the only one. He just got caught. But it is the 44 four-star generals that are serving foreign and domestic enemies that are not preserving or protecting our national intelligence. Who's going to hold them accountable? No, they come like with a SWAT team, with a, what was that, the sheriff's big armored SWAT team. Let's get 30 people to get this 21-year-old. No, all you had to do was call and say, hey, you need to come in. You're in trouble. All he's doing is whistleblowing. Not in the right way. I give you that. But he's on Discord saying, we're being lied to here. We're being taken. We're being taken advantage of. We're being made a mockery of. Like the rest of our military, like the rest of our agencies and representatives. All of that. All that stuff. That's what he was doing. And he gets the big treatment where, and I can think of a lot more people that have done, where is the SWAT team going into Fort Bliss? Where are they? Where's the sheriff's big armored vehicle with their, armor on going into Fort Bliss? Where are they? Why aren't they at Veronica Escobar's house? Because she never revealed that she has this conflict of interest while she is negligent and derelict in her duties and is, wrongful death culpable of so many of our most valuable assets, our volunteer sons and daughters. They volunteer. And they are told by these recruiters all kinds of sweet, nice things. You're joining a family. You're going to get this. No. They are made pawns in a bigger scheme of business plans for selling them sex, selling them illegal drugs, legal drugs, healthcare, because they're making them sick. Suicides are way up. They're making them mentally sick. They're making them physically sick, because once you get mentally sick, it affects you physically. And then, of course, they committed crimes against humanity with this Cobra Strike thing. I mean, where is she? And where are the arrests of those that are causing the deaths and the injuries of way more than even the, who was this this case here, the Sutherland Springs. That was what, 26 were shot. I'm trying to read through it. Um, oh, 26 people were killed and another 20 injured. This is November 2017. Well, I'm telling you, the number of people killed and the number of people injured at the hands of our leadership right now is far more than that. Far more. Far, far more. And if they are so evil and so cold blooded as to think that they can collude and conspire and lockstep together, well, they did it for COVID, but they thought they could do that to cover up the murder of Richard. Um, Maybe his lost badge with involvement in the divorce of the others by allowing her access to files. Yeah, he lost his badge. Um, we don't know. And another thing, too, that I want to say is while we were there in El Paso in 2020 or before, a little bit before, Major General Clem Coward was taken. Well, he had loss of confidence. I wonder why. And he was taken down from his command from 32nd ADCOM. So that was a hush. So listen again. The Major General, Clem Coward, that was up to no good. Absolutely, we know now he's totally up to no good. That gave Richard the very unjust and destructive permanent GOMAR. For what? For underage drinking. It's like this 21-year-old. For a 0.04 BAC, he's destroying a person, destroying their career, which is hurting them physically. And then his command is taken from him, the 32nd ADCOM, because of loss of confidence of his leadership. That is another indication that they were picking up the pieces of my son. The 21-year should have never had access and should not be a fall guy for the leaders not guarding our files, in my opinion. Absolutely. Thank you, Kat. Then he needs to be sent home to you. Yeah. Okay, so it's so weird how these comments are. And I don't see a lot of really my dear friends and stuff that come on. I have to look at them later. It's really weird how I don't get to see all the chats. But I'll look at those later. But thank you so much, everybody. This is very serious business. And how am I dealing with it? Well, I can tell you that today I decided to mess around with some things and pick out some music. And if you haven't seen it yet, let's see, display. I put together some scenes of an opera called Find Richard Halliday. And you can listen to them. Here's the first one. Find Richard Halliday, listen to the music while reading. And the first scene is called The Whistleblower. And then the second scene is called The Call of Conscience. And the third scene is The Weight of Truth. And the fourth is second act, scene one. The cover up begins. And then I'll add some more tomorrow. But yeah, just the music. If you play the music while you're reading it, because this was, I like artsy things. This was a good way of doing some research and at the same time putting this together and listening to some music in the background. And it was very telling. I think it gives you the story in another way that you can share with others so that others will know what's going on. So, okay. We still have the 1,000 letters for 1,000 days, and that is, let me find that. Yeah, right here. That's for the Inspector General Horowitz. So if you haven't sent out a letter yet to him asking for him to inspect the investigation of Find Richard Halliday, please write that letter. It's not too late. Absolutely not too late. I don't want to get to 1,000 days, but we're getting closer, and we need him to be inundated with 1,000 letters so that we can get that inspection, right? Will he do his duty? We have everyone else not doing their duty. So will he do his duty? And that's the question. So we still have that going on. And then also, let's see, with Find Richard Halliday, I know I put it up there. We have a t-shirt that you can get in red. And because I've had people say, I wanted Richard's face on it, and I wanted it in red. And so here it is in the choice. Oh, there it is. Okay. There is his face, and I'm doing this wrong. Oh, there it is. Okay. But there's an option, sorry. There's an option that you can have it in red. There it is. So, yeah. So you can have that in red, and that this is the cheapest at $19.50, the absolutely cheapest that we could do. All the money goes to them. We didn't take any from it. We just want people to wear the t-shirts that ask, "Where's Richard?" And I'm putting up different pictures that say, "Where's Richard?" and flyers and things like that. We are going to have the prayer vigil very soon. I will announce that probably tomorrow. We have the dates, we have the date, the time, and the places. So we went and got some new posters, and we'll have that. Yeah. I hope we don't have it. I hope it's a waste of money. But yeah, so we're going to do that. And yeah, that looks good, right? That looks good. What a sweet face, right? I've been looking at a lot of pictures of him lately. So, okay. Am I missing anything? The 1,000 letters, the t-shirt, the vigil. Please say a lot of prayers for us. And, write letters. Hold these people accountable. And I think the only way we can do this is to share, because we are being censored. We are being shadow banned. I had a friend that knows all about this, check things out. He goes, absolutely, you're being shadow banned. So the more you share the information, the better. And because the only thing that's going to hold them accountable is is population, populist demand, right? So thank you so much, everyone. God bless you. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing.